All right, we're flowing, and we have a guest, Jason.
Yes.
I
Hello.
always like the guest to introduce themselves. I find it very awkward having to talk about someone when they're right there. So Tara, do you have anything to say before we let Jason kick that off? We're a
Yeah,
little bit
just
crunched for time because I know we're gonna have a lot to talk about in a very short period. So I want
there'll
to
be a
be a
part
bit
2.
rushed.
Yeah, there'll be a part 2. I'll just go real quick. I had the privilege and honor of meeting Jason, I guess like a month and a half ago at a leadership mastermind that we had with the Align team. He's got an amazing backstory, just super cool human being. We started chatting and of course,
See what I mean?
he let me run into coach mode. Um And I just said, "You have to be a guest on the podcast." And then you guys have a lot of crossover, so I'm just gonna mention soccer because that will come in at
Please.
some point in time. Um, Dad,
Uh-oh.
entrepreneur, run with it, Jason, but really honored to have you on. Thank you for saying yes. And here we go.
Yeah, thank you. I was excited. I heard great things, and from meeting you, Tara, was like it was a no-brainer. I guess just quick background on me. So I grew up in Columbia, Maryland, so right between DC and Baltimore. Grew up here, kind of right after high school, was getting in a situation where I needed to help earn income for the family. So I got my real estate license right out of high school. So instead of going and working in Ocean City and kind of becoming a degenerate, I got my license and studied and worked that summer. So I think that was a good fork in the road for me because I don't know where I would be if I didn't do that. But was really fortunate to meet a really great mentor who's still a lifelong friend and brother right now. His name was Pat Hyben. He had a really successful real estate brokerage in the town. And literally, I was just at a Subway sandwich shop with my buddies, and I saw him, and I was like, that's Pat Hyben. I was like, he was like the Michael Jordan of real estate. And my friends are like, dude, we don't know who the hell you're talking about. Like, we don't care. I was like, no, like that's Pat Hyben. So all I could think of was like, I just yelled at him. I was like, Pat. And I looked the other way, like that was a good move in my mind. And then all of a sudden I turned back and he's looking right at me. He's like, "What's up?" I was like, "Oh shit." So pretty much just walked up to him. I begged him for an internship. I said, "Look, I don't want to get paid. I just want to learn if there's any way I can be around you. You know, I'm here." So got the internship, worked for him for a few years, learned kind of get my butt kicked in the real world, just doing sales. And after that point, I just kind of got the itch. I want to build something. So I always kind of had a kind of a passion for making things more efficient, helping people. I always kind of had this construction background. Um, so started a company doing energy audits on homes and buildings. So we would go, me, two other guys, 0% credit cards, just begged our friends and family, like, let us do it for free. If you like it, refer us. It was as like grassroots, like entrepreneurship 101 as I've ever seen it. This was in 2008. And so we ended up building the company over about 9 years. Had a team that one of my biggest, kind of career pride moments is just the team and the culture that we built. But we grew too fast. And I was the last person you convince you can do that. I thought, revenue was profit and I thought sales were growth and I was just like cruising. We went from, it was about 6 employees, about $300,000 of revenue to about 60 employees and $5 or $6 million in revenue in 12 months and just literally just kind of took off on us. We were trying to hold on. And then we had a really big contract on a military base that we didn't get paid on. It was just an internal error that we made and we had to own it. It was about $700,000 loss. And so I was telling Tara when we met, I said, my office was like 6 minutes from my house. I was driving around my town of Columbia for about 3 hours. I just couldn't go home. Every time I passed my house, I just could go. It was 3 weeks after my daughter Lola was born. We have 3 kids. And I remember just pulling up. My wife was in the driveway. I just walked up, told her um, that just everything. And I just remember said we literally lost everything. Like, everything was in the business. And she just put her hand on my shoulder and she told me, "I trust you." So at that point, I'll be honest with you. At that point, everything felt solvable. It really was like that was the weight off my shoulders that I needed to feel. But so then I just literally called everybody in my phone book. I said, if there's anywhere I can add value, I'm available. 2 calls came back. One was a friend of mine's dad. He's like, you can haul trash and dig holes. And I, told this to Tara. I said, if I'm going to dig holes, I'm gonna be the best fucking hole digger you've ever seen. If I'm hauling trash, it's gonna be the best job site you've ever seen. So honestly, rebuilt my pride doing those things, just controlling what I could control. And then a previous client had asked, "Hey, if you can help us," they're looking to sell their buildings and buy businesses with their proceeds. And they said, "If you can help us find them, negotiate them, we'll give you equity in the companies that we buy." So I was learning a lot about what made companies strong, what made them not attractive, all that. But so yeah, that's a little bit on me. I guess that was a longer story there.
No,
That was a
I always
great
find it incredible. I'm someone, Tara knows this, and the audience knows, just like a constantly shedding skin and starting new things. It's
Mm.
great. People never hear about the before part of the story, so
Mm.
I love that you kind of walked us through that, and as abbreviated as that was. Firstly, who's your soccer team?
In World Cup,
Well, do you have
for
a
World
Premier
Cup,
League team?
Liverpool. Yeah,
That's
love Liverpool.
acceptable. Unfortunate, but
Uh,
acceptable.
I
We
know.
can
Picked them early. I'm
continue the
sticking with them.
podcast. Um,
Well, plus
Yeah,
you played soccer, Paolo. Like, I don't know, there was
yeah,
something you had to do,
that's all it is.
500 juggles or whatever you
Yeah.
guys call it to even try out for this one team or
Yeah,
oh,
our high
really?
school team was fairly competitive. Yeah, so just to try out, and I always use this as like a parallel for like core values or like filters. Our coach, you had to run 5 6 minute miles in a row, then juggle the ball 500 times to try out. So that was like the
Wow.
threshold to. So it was a very serious group, and I think again that was another source of pride where we were not the best soccer players by any means. We were probably the least skilled
Yeah,
players in, but I mean we played in 3 state championships and won two based on discipline and character, I think.
for sure.
So,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
yeah, yep,
sports does that for you. So
yeah.
let's jump into EOS, and you kind of gave us the background on what got you here. What led you into EOS? Explain a little bit about it for the audience in case they're unfamiliar with it, and what about uh, coaching leadership and helping them with clarity and gaining traction with their businesses. What was it that kind of drew you to that?
Mm. Yeah, so EOS entrepreneurial operating system, and the whole goal is to get companies strong called vision, traction, healthy. So vision, crystal clear where we're going, not just in the owner's head, but every single person crystal clear where we're going, how we're going to get there. Traction, we say vision without traction, hallucination. And so traction is that weekly, daily accountability it takes to do what it takes to get where we want to go. And then healthy is just building out an organization that has true shared core values where you enjoy the people you're rocking and rolling with. And so that's at a 30,000 foot view, what we're working to do with help get companies get strong in those three areas. What got me into it was actually at the time when our business was closing, I was or I am still part of a mastermind group where we hold each other accountable for health, wealth, and relationships. And I'd say a best friend and a mentor out of Philadelphia has a 120-ish person, real estate development company, and he was just the bottleneck. He was working 8 hours a week. He was struggling. He was frustrated. And then he brought in an EOS implementer and literally like 6 months later, he's like, this is crazy. Like it's actually working. Like the standards are doing a lot of the lifting. I'm out of the bottleneck mode and I'm actually able to help grow the company. So about 13 years ago, when all this went down, we started running our mastermind group off of the framework. So
Cool.
we just organically started running the level 10s, the quarterlies. Then I started using it a little bit with the companies we were investing in from the previous client, just to try to get everybody on the same sheet of music. And I found, kind of like I'm sure a lot of your guests, like I found like when I was doing it, it gave me energy. I enjoyed it. I felt like I was helpful, and which is a core value of mine. So it just kind of felt really natural. And so I always joke, I ended up getting street legal in 2023 because I was just kind of doing it, winging it. And I was like, you know what, this is getting to a point where it makes sense to just get properly in the fold. Um, and for me, I remember that walk up the driveway like it was yesterday. And I know that a lot of times it's one or two big decisions these companies are making in that room that are the difference between somebody walking up the driveway, telling their family they lost everything or not. So I take the sessions very serious. Like I think those sessions are entrepreneurial life and death, what they're doing in there. So I feel really proud to help them. Um, and so that's kind of what got me into it and why I love doing it.
And just a quick follow up before Tara kind of jumps in. I'm always curious with these kind of things. What where the buy-in comes from? Obviously, someone's brought you in, right?
Sure.
Is there resistance from people? I don't like saying further down the organization, but further down the organizational chart, or do you often find that they're actually desperate for this
Mm.
because leadership is lacking in a lot of what you're going to walk through? Or is it the other way around, that leadership's desperate to try and implement something, and the people that they're working with aren't ready to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'd say a little bit of both, but I'll clarify. And so I think that if I zoom out, the biggest thing I've noticed is that, and we use this in the session room with companies, like there really is relevance to a target market. And a lot of times people think a target market is demographic, geographic, but one of the things that EOS uses that I think is truly important is the psychographic nature. So, they may have the number of employees, they may be in the geography, they may have all the kind of mathematical things that make sense. But if they don't want to grow or they don't want to change, there's a quote another implementer used. They said, if you drag them in, you got to drag them around. And I have been learning that the hard way, early on. It's like I just would drag the clients and be like, oh, don't worry, you'll like this. And then eventually it doesn't fit or doesn't roll out well. I have found that most of the times people are looking for something like this. And there may be some skepticism of like, is it really that consistent, or will it really work when we roll it out? But I have found that usually the leadership team is in. However, what I find is that and this is like an EOS concept, is like the visionary and integrator dynamic, right? A lot of times the visionary is supposed to be out in front, seeing things that are around corners, culture, activity, like all that out front work. Integrator's job is to run the day to day. And typically what happens when a visionary is running the day to day, there's a lot of whiplash. There's a lot of shiny objects. There's a lot, I saw this at a conference, we're going to try this month. And so I think that most times people, once they kind of get an understanding of like what is EOS and then what is it not, there's a sense of calm and there's a sense of like, oh, okay, like it's almost not a life raft, but it's like something. It's an edge of the pool you can grab onto and catch your breath. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
I want to touch on that fast, just from the other side of it, being in companies where EOS was being brought in, being there as an employee, also being there as a coach. Typically, like Jason said, you've got this visionary, and he's like, he or she is ebbing and flowing in and out, in and out, in and out. You have meetings every single week. No one really takes responsibility, ownership, accountability for what's going to have to happen. So you're having the same meetings, the same conversations over and over again. You finally start to get some traction, and then the visionary comes in and goes, "What's going on?" and screws everything up again. You typically found where you've got, a percentage of the table that is so hungry for this, a percentage of the table that's hungry for it, but really skeptical, like, here's another thing we're trying again, another
yeah,
waste of time. And then you've got the people that are really scared because they're probably not a core values fit.
mm,
And they've been either just because of their tenure there, they've been just kind of going along, and they know that shining the light where it's going to be shined is probably going to, uh, the gig's up, kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
And if the visionary is not on board with it, though, it will not work, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
Um, so
Totally agree.
it's just a cool process, and I think for Jason or anyone that's run something like this, knowing how powerful it is, and like knowing the skeptics in the room, and that you're going to be able to help them turn it around as long as the visionary is there. And I know a lot of implementers that if the visionary is not going to come to the meetings, they will not take on the clients,
Mm,
in
yeah,
the beginning, at least.
yeah.
So super cool.
Mm,
One of the things, Jason, and I want to talk personal and what you see with leadership, and if you want to really get specific to some real estate teams, because we do have a lot of
yeah,
real
yeah.
estate listeners. One of the things that you and I had talked about before, and Paolo and I often talk about this, the masculine and the feminine, right? And we talk about women and mothers and men and being fathers in the world, and relating to your story just as a man, as a father. And I know it's important to you to create safe spaces for your family.
Mhm,
Sometimes challenging to do when you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world. You have to do it all, you have to control it all, you have to provide all of that.
mhm,
So I know you've come up with ways in your life through systems and people and kind of letting go of control of everything. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience for you, or how you see systems leverage letting go of control for leadership, um, playing out, and kind of some of the mistakes that you see being made, and maybe one or two tools that you think is really powerful?
yeah, that's a great question. I'll kind of maybe I'll do like a little bit of paralleling between. And what's funny is I'll preface like I'm not a systems person. I'm really, and that's I think I gravitate to US because it's like it's almost like plug and play. So I just want to say that because I think a lot of times like oh well I'm not wired to like be regimented and do all that thing. I think what I found is that my kind of habits and structure have created freedom for me versus kind of restricted me from having them. So I think that's like the upgrade to my mentality I've had as I've gotten a little bit older. But I think that for me, my in my background, I just really, as I grew, I just wanted to be there for my family, a present. And I found that if I was solving for that, everything would feel right. But if that was the thing that got sacrificed, then it just, no matter what success I was having outside, it didn't really help me on the inside, especially as I saw, like, growing up, my father was always working. He was always out doing what he needed to do for the family. He immigrated here, and I'm eternal respect for him kind of making that life decision to create for us. Um, but I think that with family or in business, what I find is that a lot of times the standards just aren't clear. What are the standards? What is winning? What is not winning? What is acceptable? What is unacceptable type behavior? And so I think everybody getting on the same page of that. And what I always say is there's not right or wrong. There's just, are we clear? So, when I'm working with a company, like, I'm not telling them what is the right thing to do, but they need to come up with it. Because if they're not coming up with it, then somebody can be going totally off the rails thinking they're doing the best thing in the world for the company. And it's just all this kind of lag and inefficiency in the operation. So I think, a lot of times I think it comes down to just open, honest conversations. And another thing I use and I frame it is like, it's not you versus me, it's us versus the issue. So whether that's personally or professionally, we channel that energy at solving the issue as opposed to back and forth personally.
Mm.
And the other big lesson I've learned is that, my evening routine is actually the dictator of my morning routine. So, kind of having those little bit of rituals, and again, not like rigid, but just pragmatic, and so that's where I found to be able to kind of, because I realize I got to be able to bring that energy. If I'm not bringing it, then it's my responsibility that I'm letting people down, family or business.
Paolo just fell in love with you when he said that. He thought he liked you before, and then you said that my evening sets up my next day, because that is
Yeah.
something Paolo is very passionate
Well,
about.
and also the fact that you're not a systems guy, because I'm the same way, as Tara can probably attest to. Um,
Yeah.
but you need structure, right? Like, I think
Right.
that that's
Well,
what
so,
it is. You need
yeah, agreed.
structure, but you don't necessarily have to have a rigid system. I think flexibility is really key there.
Yeah.
And one of the things Tara and I talk about a lot is, and we've both seen it from the different ends of the spectrum. Whereas I've helped a lot of people with health that have seen improvements in their relationships
Mhm.
in business and how they act
Oh yeah.
and their efficiency at work and their productivity at work. And then Tara, on the business side of things, she's had people say, "This has improved my marriage," like learning these
Yeah.
communication tools and things like that. What kind of, and you touched a little bit on it there, but perhaps go into a little bit more detail about how EOS has kind of translated into some of your clients' personal lives. Because I think
Yeah.
it's always struck me as quite amusing that people and businesses will spend infinite amounts of money to improve their business, but won't put those
Yeah.
same structures around
Yeah.
their personal lives, and everything goes off the rail there.
Yeah. Well, Jim Rohn, who has passed, he's like a personal development kind of guy that was really influential for me. He's a real estate. I learned him from like the real estate people, but he always said, spend more work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Mhm.
And I think that's lost on 99% of people. I think they're just so focused on the job and the career that they forget that they're crafting themselves every day, either for the good or the bad. Um, so I'll give you an example. So how EOS, so I think Ed Milet has a quote I really like. He says, "Our confidence comes from keeping the little promises we make to ourselves." And whether it's getting up at the time we said, whether it's doing the push-ups, whether it's doing the routine. And so what I found is that I'll relate this to the EOS scorecard, because that's something I use personally, and I think the business, and I've seen people start using a personal scorecard as well as their business scorecard. And pretty much the scorecard, what I would say is, and this is not like the EOS stuff, but it's like, zoom out. What's the best version of us look like that week? What are we doing? In health, in wealth, in relationships, in kind of the gardens of life, right? Not just, one silo of it. And then, again, there's not right or wrong, but there is when you're working on yourself, this is what I think a great version of me looks like. I'm spending this much time with my kids. I'm spending this much time in the business. I'm doing this with my wife or spouse. And then you zoom out and then say, all right, let's get after it. And what happens is, the two things. One is you start doing the things you should be doing more often than not. And the second thing I see is that course correction really shrinks, right? If you have a bad week, okay, you get back on it the following week. Versus if you're not tracking it, you can not go to the gym for 3 months and feel like, I went to the gym. It wasn't too long ago. So I think that's where I've seen it really. And then I think once people start believing in themselves at the core, they bring a better self to that business meeting. They bring a better self when they're walking in the door to their family. Another quote I heard from Tony Robbins, that it was just like, it was a peculiar one, but it really stuck with me. He said, "You know, this is how you can tell what your spouse or your family feels about you, is when they hear that garage door open, you're coming in. Whatever that feeling is they have, that's your brand to them. Like, that's what they feel about you." And I always think about that.
Mm. Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good one. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
but one other thing I'll throw out there, Tara and I were talking about this a little earlier, was an exercise that really, I had a client that was like, this, vision traction, right? Vision traction healthy. And so he was like, vision. He's like, we don't talk about this bullshit vision. Like, we just need people to get to work. Like, we don't need to talk about all this pie in the sky stuff like that. And I was like, look, I get it. Like, you have to execute. But there was two thoughts that came to mind. One is, um, I did an exercise with a person facilitated for us, and pretty much he had us rank how we felt, like 1 out of 10, in health, in wealth, in relationships, in spiritual contribution, in several areas of life, called pillars of life. So we did the ranking, and that was very interesting, but it was it was cool. Then he said, "Now I want you to write your obituary from your spouse's perspective, from your kid's perspective, and from your best friend's perspective." And so gave us, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to really write all that out. And there was not a dry eye in the room. You can imagine this was I think, yeah, everybody in our group has children, has, whatever. And so what it did was it showed us, like, this is the vision we have for our life. And is there a delta between what we want and hope our family says and how we're acting? And so I kind of used that as an example. I said, that vision is going to tell you whether what you're doing today is getting you closer or farther away from where you want to be. So, you can't live in the clouds, but you got to know, my guy Howard Behar from Starbucks. That's a different story, longer story on how I stalked him to get him as a mentor. But he said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So I think there's a lot of value in that vision being crystal clear. I think it creates a lot of autonomy, because now people know where they need to go, as opposed to every step they got to ask for direction, ask for kind of clarity. So
I
I'm
want to
just like throwing stuff out.
no, I
No, I
it's
love that.
fantastic. And again, we got 5 minutes, but
Sure.
I want to just interject there for a moment, because that, like, the meaning of life, like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? It becomes so overwhelming for people that they do identify as their job title, right? They don't even look at who they are as people and what they want to accomplish. Another Tony Robbins said the other day, success is getting what you want. Fulfillment is
Mm,
doing what you're meant to do here on this earth for the people that you love and those that you're going to learn to love. And to me, success without fulfillment is failure. And everyone's in different parts of their journey, and this was a big aha moment for me a few times. This clarity, this meaning of why we're here and what are we meant to do, and right, how do you get clarity, Jason, right?
mm,
um it's through constant discovery, and this is not a specific fixed answer. The
yeah.
part of the beauty of life is that you're either dead and dying or
Mm,
green and growing. And if
mm,
you are saying, "Yes, I need clarity. I need to make decisions. I'm not sure who I am. I'd forgotten why I even started this in the first place." So many people step back because that becomes uncomfortable. They
yeah.
think they have to do it alone. They don't know how to have the conversations. They go, "Yeah, I'm a family man," but then they're out golfing every single weekend.
Mm,
Okay? If you're saying one thing and then you can't show me on your calendar where's the
yeah.
evidence,
Yeah.
you're out of alignment. So of course you're feeling off.
Yeah.
So it's simple techniques to get the brain going in some powerful questions that there's never a perfect answer to, that we're going to
Right.
continue evolving from. And that's the importance of being in rooms with people like you, like Paolo, like myself, with the other amazing leaders, and just human beings out there. So I just want to encourage people, if that feels like not for me because I don't know how to find it, just connect with one of us. Jason's now a social media god since we had
Oh,
Yeah.
our meeting.
please no.
But
Uh, a couple thoughts on that. Just one is, I agree. The audio has to match the video, right? And that kind of comes back to us being able to trust ourselves. And Atomic Habits, I'll be honest with you, the James Clear book, I think that's the best book that's been made in the last 10 years. Like, I think that a lot of stuff has iterated and reiterated things, but I think that book is like a framework that should be taught everywhere to everybody. The other thing is I went through an exercise and I got this through Go Abundance, the mastermind. I know we're short here on time, but it was called a 5-year vision. And really what it was writing out the 5-year vision in the present tense. And I think the barrier to what you alluded to, Terry, is I think a lot of people think it's just supposed to be right there. And what I realized, and Howard Bayar helped me through this, was like, that process might take 3 months to really come up with what you feel hits. So what I always say is I say, write for the trash can. Like, write it, you're going to read it, and like 20% of it's going to feel great, and 80% of it you're going to be like, what the hell is this? And then just keep iterating, keep iterating. And now, I mean, I carry mine with me. I mean, I showed you my journal when we were together, but like, I read this every single day. And it's now it's like a reset where if I'm feeling frustrated or overwhelmed by what's happening in the daily, it's like zoom out. Oh, okay, this is where I'm going. And if I believe that, these are supposed to happen to get me there, good, bad, or ugly, I know that's happening. So it flips the circumstances on the head. I can use the circumstances as fuel as opposed to them being barriers I can't overcome.
Yeah. Love that.
But
One of the things we wanted to touch on today before we ended was part of our previous conversation is that, you believe in not reacting to the world and to designing, what your life looks like. And we call that a life by design, not by default. And I think you've
mm,
given so many just quick little tips, even there, the journaling, consistently going to something, the book Atomic Habits, fantastic
mm.
book. If there was one thing you could leave the audience with, maybe they're feeling stuck, maybe they're hearing all of these things. How do you, whether it's something you do physically or mentally or both, take that very next step? How do you decide what that very next small step is?
Yeah. I think that the next small step is always something that has to do with getting outside, moving your body, being in nature, and then being kind to yourself. I mean, I think that we're so hard on ourselves that we're not where we want to be right now. And I think that, again, Tony Robbins says, we overestimate what we can do in a year, we underestimate what we can do in 10. And I think that if we can just find I was the Gary Keller, right? Here's a real estate reference, the one thing, right?
Mhm.
What's the one thing that if I do makes everything else either easier or unnecessary? Like, find that one thing and just commit to doing it, whatever the right number is. But like, I think that that little steady consistency, it compounds and you start to build trust in yourself and you can add to that as opposed to trying to do everything all at once and feeling like you failed. So yeah.
Mm. Excellent. 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 Paolo, I want to hear your closing thoughts.
Yeah, it's fine. I was literally about to drop that Tony Robbins quote about overestimating and underestimating. But what I love about meeting and knowing people like yourself is, there are people, and I'll include myself in it, that aren't at the end of that 5-year vision yet, right?
Mhm.
And of course, that's always evolving because once you get
Sure.
there, you want to grow and keep
Yeah.
moving. But
Mine was a
you know,
15 year, by the way. When I wrote it 5, it's actually
yeah,
15 was mine.
yeah. But you're someone that's kind of you're ahead of where a lot of folks are, and it's just proof that this stuff works. Just being
Mm.
consistent works. Putting in the
Yeah.
work works. So it's an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you. I'm glad Tara connected us, and I'm confident this will be a long and fruitful relationship for everybody, including the listeners. Getting to know you a bit more. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, listen, I was digging holes and hauling trash. So this isn't some, kind of anecdotal thing, but it was just
Yeah.
like to your point, it was just doing the little things every day to my best. And it just digging out of the hole was the goal.
Jason had an old junker truck that he bought
Oh
that,
my gosh.
and there I saw a photo of it. It's like, oh my God, am I driving this around? And what I love the most about this story is that his son thought it was the coolest thing
Yeah.
that existed. And like, that's just like that's the stuff that makes me want to cry immediately because all this perception, all of this weight that we put on ourselves and like the people that we love and care about the most, they just think we're the coolest things that ever
Mm,
lived because we're showing up the best that we can for ourselves to them. And like That's the win. That's the thought that has carried me through some of the darkest moments. And I think for each one of you, we can all point to that this judgment of the outside world, and then looking at one of our children and how they're looking at us, or what they think is so cool. It's not the bank account. It's never the bank account. It's the what they're getting from us and with us. So super powerful. Jason, we will put way to connect with you in the show notes, but do you have an ideal way? LinkedIn, which do you prefer?
Based on your coaching, LinkedIn is my best way to connect with me. That has been upgraded
Connect.
since meeting Tara.
Good, good. I love it. Jason committed, was accountable, took action, live what you say, take small little steps, go grab Atomic Habits, whatever it is, connect with us. We're here to support each other. Thank you so much. I know this is not the last time that we're going to have you on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate both of you.
Can I say one last thing I think would be helpful for people if
Yeah.
they are kind of feeling like is I would find a group, a mastermind, either one or two people that you can share with, you can be held accountable to. I think that isolation is the enemy of progress. And I think a lot of times when I'm going through tough stuff, my nature is to isolate because either I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, or whatever. And that's exactly when you got to lean into the people that you trust. So I would say find one or two people you can kind of create a mastermind with that you trust and know have your back. I think that's another key to
Yeah.
it.
Paolo,
Yeah.
your group that you just launched, what's the name of it on
Mm,
Meetup?
The Healthy Lifestyle Group.
Okay.
there you
Incredibly
go.
original name.
Yeah, it's clear. It's
Yeah,
clear. I love it.
exactly. Says what it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Have a kick-ass day. Until next time, bye for now.